Well, my first meeting with Kobe was incredible, something I'll always remember. It was the Lakers Media Day in 1996. You know, it's a crazy scene, a chaotic scene in the gym. And he came over to my backdrop and basic headshot. I went in, introduced myself respectfully. I said, "Hey, Kobe, I'm Andy Bernstein. I'm your team photographer." And he shook my hand, looked me straight in the eye, kept holding my hand and said, "Well, I know who you are, man." And I'm thinking, okay, this kid's a little bit of a smart ass. I said, you know, how's that possible? We never met before. And he said, well, I had all your posters in my room growing up. You know, from that moment on, I just knew there was something different about this kid. I had seen flashes of greatness at that level before. You know, Michael Jordan, you know, famously had this competitive edge to him all the time. You know, Magic did too, although, you know, Magic sort of tempered that a little bit with his infectious smile. Kobe was just a competitor all the time. I mean, he was obsessed with basketball. He wanted to continually get better. You know, one of the tenets of the Mamba mentality is obsessiveness, but it's also curiosity. And he wasn't shy about asking veterans. Very famously, he and Michael Jordan had conversations on the court, you know, which is kind of interesting. You don't really see that happening very often. But I found that he lived and breathed basketball, always wanted to get better. If there was something in his game that needed to improve, he was always the first guy at practice, last guy to leave. The young Kobe was literally a dunk machine. I mean, you know, the kid would give you 4 or 5 dunks a game, you know, and if I came home with 1 or 2, or God forbid none, it was a bad night. And, you know, if I missed one, I'd be kicking myself, you know, for days or weeks after that. But there was always the next game. My favorite memories really was when they won the championship the first year, the 2000 championship. They won it at Staples Center. You know, obviously it was Kobe's first, and he was living it up. He loved it. We at the NBA, after a championship, we have a backdrop set up in an auxiliary room somewhere. This one happened to be in the Kings locker room. So hours after the championship, you know, after the buzzer goes off, after all the chaos in the locker room and press conferences and all that stuff, the NBA, finally get the players on our set. You know, he was feeling good. I mean, the champagne was flowing in that locker room. His hat was all weird. That's one of my most really cherished memories of shooting the young Kobe. Well, Phil and Kobe always seemed to have a great working relationship, even from the beginning, especially when it got to 2009. And they finally won, you know, the championship without Shaq. There's a moment that, you know, after the 2009 championship where they hugged each other, you know, like right on the court, following, you know, the buzzer going off, and then they broke the hug, and that is one of my top 3 or 4 favorite photos ever of Kobe. Well, I saw a change in Kobe when he started, well, first of all, when he met Vanessa and became a husband, and then when he started to have kids, when Natalia came along and then Gigi came along shortly after that, I saw him have the ability to kind of leave it all on the court. You know, we in the media could physically see him, you know, be an assassin on the court, go do press conference afterwards or meet the media in the locker room. Vanessa and the girls are waiting outside, and as soon as he would exit the locker room, you know, they'd run screaming into his arm, "Daddy," and then the Mamba was done, like hanging up the cape. He's leaving, and I think all of us in the media were respectful of that. That once he sort of broke that threshold from locker room to leaving the arena, we left him alone because this is his private time with his family. If I had to point to one picture, it would probably be the one of him in the ice, in the black and white. It was shot in the 2009-10 season. And that picture just speaks to me. It's not an action picture, but it really speaks to me as to the essence of the Mamba mentality. Kobe was beat up at the time. We were on a long road trip. It was a back-to-back game. So we saw him icing both ankles. He's got his finger in a coffee cup full of ice, literally willing himself to play, meditating in a kind of busy locker room situation. You know, did a kind of walk by, saw that happening, shot a couple of frames, boom, and I was out. And that remains one of my favorite photos. I think that his legacy is that his greatness was earned. Yes, he had talent, he had innate talent, but he was continually working on his game. He was continually curious. He was relentless. He showed strength in moments that most people wouldn't have strength. And those are all the tenets of the Mamba mentality that I always point to, that now I'm trying to live my life by, that I learned from him. And I think that we all can celebrate this incredible career, this person who came into all of our lives for a very short time, unfortunately, but I was lucky to be around him for 20 years, documenting every step of the way. And although we all miss him and grieve and will forever, I'll always be forever grateful that he did come into my life and that I was able to have a subject in front of my camera for 20 years that will never be duplicated.